Well, hello, hello, hello. It's Monday night, and you know what happens on Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to Live Live, a place where we meet up to receive motivational and inspirational and activational strategies for those challenging and changing life moments. I am your host, Keela Bryson. And today we're going to get right into tonight's topic. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I hope that you were able to get some projects done. I hope that you were able to work on last week's topic that we had as well as the previous weeks. I hope that the information that you're receiving on this conference call is making you think and causing you to move in a different direction than you have been operating in. Because without thinking, we won't become aware of the areas that need to be changed, or we won't be challenged in the way that we need to be challenged so that we can make some positive changes in our lives. And so I hope that when you come each week, I trust and pray that you're getting something good out of these lessons, and I hope that it's producing fruit in your life. And don't forget to tell a friend, tell a neighbor about our weekly conference calls. And I'm sure they will enjoy the information that we're providing. I do my very best to bring information that I feel is relevant as well as helpful to you. All right, let's get started because tonight my topic is somewhat lengthy, and so I've got to try to squeeze all this in hopefully within these 30 minutes. Tonight I want to talk about being authentically you. You know, when we look around society these days, we see very few individuals who are authentically being the person that God created them to be. We see so many copycats, and you can relate. I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying. And it's been said that when each additional copy of us is made of, like if you go to the copy machine and you make a copy of something, each time you make a copy of that original, a lot of times it begins to lose its resolution. And the same thing happens to us when we try to mimic folks or we're trying to be someone who we are not. We begin to lose our own originality. And, you know, in my opinion, there's just too much duplication going on. And I believe that we were born to stand out and to be different. And I've never had a problem with trying to fit in or trying to be somebody that I'm not when it comes to like peer pressure in high school. I've always been different and always been able to stand out. And I see so many people, even when I was growing up in school, who didn't have the courage to resist being a copycat. And so as a result, they ended up not being themselves and they ended up getting in trouble and doing things that just flat out was not who they really were. We were born to define our own style, our own preference, our own beauty in life. You know, we live this life once, and why would we want to spend it trying to be somebody else when God has given so much to us and gifted us with so much? And then if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves trying to dress like somebody else, look like somebody else, walk and talk like somebody else. And God wants you to do what it is that he designed you to do. Each of us have our own unique quirks and beauty and thoughts. And I believe in this hour, if we're going to do anything great and creative in this time, we need to be authentic. I know I'm tired of hearing the same old songs pretty much, other than they may have changed the beat up and got a different singer singing. And I'm tired of hearing songs that were remakes of songs that I grew up on in the 70s. It's like society, this culture is losing its creativity because we have so much copycatting going on. And if you copycat, you basically cancel out your own creativity. You know, there's something special inside of you that you can create and bring forth, something new, something fresh, a fresh word from God, a fresh book, a fresh style, a fresh new electronic gizmo. But if you continue to copy off people, and we won't be able to bring forth that creativity that God has given us, because when you get into a spirit of duplication, you cut off your own creativity. And, unfortunately, many of us have decided to fit in with the status quo at the expense of losing our own authenticity. And that's so sad. When you look around, you see a lot of young people who are trapped in this situation of trying to fit in with the status quo. And if, as a young person, you don't begin to break that cycle or break that habit, then you will turn into an adult who's doing the same thing, trying to fit in with various groups because you want to be accepted. And in order to be authentic, we have to be comfortable with not being accepted sometimes. Because sometimes people won't like you because you're different, because you know how to speak up, because you're creative. And that's okay. In the end, when they see the beauty that you have to contribute to the culture, they're going to like you. But it's time out for us trying to fit in so we can go along with the status quo. This problem is so bad until if you ask most folks this question of, tell me about yourself, or if you ask them, who are you? You will find them, they'll get stunned. Their eyes are buck open and they're stumbling and stuttering because they find it difficult to articulate who they are because in actuality they flat out don't know. And this is the result of copying off people or trying to be someone else or not being your own authentic self. If you're trying to be someone else and dress like someone else or talk like someone else, you lose touch with who you are. And so when you go on that job interview or that interview for college and they ask you to tell them something about yourself or to tell them who you are, you don't want to be one of those people who can't articulate it or lost for words. And people who are unable to articulate that is because they've lived their lives according to what they've seen others do. And as a result, they don't know who they are. And when you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want. And so I just want to challenge you tonight. Let's be authentic, everybody. Let's be who God created us to be. Don't try to be somebody else just so you can fit in, because at the end of the day, you can try to do all that and they still won't really accept you. And in fact, most people can tell when you're not being your authentic self anyway. I have found that when most people are asked the question of who they are, they usually give out generic answers that everyone is accustomed to hearing. And their answer is very superficial. Have you ever met a person and you asked them a question that was kind of a deep question that causes deep introspection? And you can tell when they just give you this little superficial answer that's really not settling with you. It's just something that's not authentic about their answer. And so, and that's something that we got to remember. When we're not real, people can tell usually if they're honest about it. Now, most people won't say, well, that's not you. You're not being real. Most people won't say that. But deep down inside, they can feel when you're not being authentically you. So I want to challenge us tonight to get out the bus of going along to get along. What does that mean? That means I'm not really digging what you're doing. I'm not really digging the style of the culture. I'm not really digging the rules of this particular organization or what have you, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just so I can get along with you and so that you will accept me. And it's time out for that. You don't want to be a person that end up in your 40s and 50s and finally figure out who you are. But it will happen like that if you don't begin to learn how to live authentic. What does the word authentic mean? In order to move any further, that's one thing that we need to do is first define authentic so that we'll know what we're doing when we're being authentically ourselves. When you're authentic, that means not false, not copied. It means to be genuine, to be real, and to be honest. Oh, I love that last one. Honest, to be honest. How many of you know that I'm just so tired of people being fake? When you're authentic, you're not being false. You're not being copied. You're being genuine. You're being honest, and you're being real. And that's what we need. When you're authentic, you're not a pretender. You're not an actor, and you're not being fake. And so that's what we need. It's a terrible feeling to be walking around every day pretending to be something and someone that you're not. It gets old. When you're not authentic, the real you can't come forth because you're busy trying to be someone or something fake. If you're not being authentically you, you're wasting precious time. You're wasting time in this life being someone else and not who God designed you to be. Now, that's ridiculous to spend a lifetime being someone else and never really learning who you are, what you really like, what are your real values about life, what is your real opinion about this particular subject. You know, a lot of times we adopt the opinions of maybe our parents or the opinions of a religious institution or the opinion of someone we feel is smarter than us. But what do you really think about it, a situation? How do you really feel about it? And one way to find that out is we have to start being authentic. All right, when you're authentic, I'm going to tell you, you will find the real you. Did you know that there's the real you inside of this person that you display every day to us? When you are authentic, life will be easier, and you will begin to live in freedom because you're no longer masking yourself and your true values and your true feelings. You know, that word masking sticks out to me because there are so many people walking around with a mask on. And it's such a prevalent thing that happens in society until when that person ends up committing a crime or doing some terrible act. A lot of times we are just in total disbelief and shock. You know why? Because that person was putting on a mask before us, and we didn't know that that was the real them. And so when we're not being authentic, it's like getting up every morning, putting on this mask, getting in your car and going to work, going to class, and no one really knows who you are, who the real you are. All we know is we see Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz showing up for work every day. But at night, we may see this total different person that goes home and takes his mask off. And sometimes we never really find out who a person really is until they commit a crime or they decide to no longer, pretend anymore. They decide to take the mask off and tell their true feelings or give us their true opinion about a matter. But it's time to take the mask off. It's time to be real. And when you do that, you will be so much more happier. Your life will be more fulfilling because you're being your authentic self. And when you're not your authentic self, do you know what you're doing? You're putting yourself and your life in bondage because you're waking up every morning living a life that's in the society and your peers, the TV, the culture, social media, religious institutions, etc. are telling you that you should be living. But what say you about being authentic? And this is the purpose of tonight's call, is to cause you to think on that. What are you doing that's not really authentically you? Or you may be a person that's, you are real. You wake up every morning honest and genuine and being who you truly are. And if you are, that's good. Congratulations. Keep it up. Help me to help others to get out of the bondage of being inauthentic. So the next point I want to make, 4 signs of inauthenticity. 4 signs, 4 ways that you can identify when you're being inauthentic, when you're not being real. When we're not being ourselves, a lot of times one way that you can tell when someone is not being who they really are, they tend to use a high voice. When we're not projecting from our belly, and chances are everything below the neck is starved of breath. You've seen people who, you come around and they get into this real proper speaking voice, and then as you continue to talk to them during the conversation, they slip and you hear their real voice. Well, they're not being authentic. And this is one way that you can tell. This is one of the signs that they have a high voice. Okay, and then another sign of a person that's not being authentic is that they talk super fast. And I've heard people say that you can tell schemers and con artists. One of the tactics of determining that you're dealing with a con artist or a schemer is they talk really fast. A lot of times you see this happen with salespeople. They're not being the real person. They're just giving you this image, this mask, this actor that you're dealing with. The next thing that you need to pay attention to as a sign of when a person is not being authentic, pay attention to what their body is doing. One thing that you'll notice if you're in the right place, or maybe if you're, watching this person speak to somebody else and you by chance are standing behind them, if they clench their bottom or their rear end while they're talking, that's a possible sign that they're not being authentic. If they're clenching their hands or their jaw, you've seen people, you can see them squeezing the muscles in their jaw. This is another possible indication that this person is not being authentic. Our bodies have billions of cells firing at once, and those cells cannot be fooled. And when a person is not being authentic, the tension from being inauthentic is picked up instantly by the body. And this is one way you can do a body scan of when somebody is not being authentic with you and when you're not being authentic with yourself. It's like you're trying to fight really hard to keep that poker face straight and to make sure that poker face stays in position and in the action mode and doesn't give off any contradicting expressions. So watch that. Pay attention. Pay attention to your body and notice these things when you're in conversation and dealing with people. The next way that you can determine if somebody is being authentic or if you're being authentic is, are you breathing? Shallow breathing in the chest area versus the belly will not only change your voice, but is also a signal of fear, nervousness, and playing the game of inauthenticity. If a person is breathing shallowly, and you can tell because you will begin to sense that fear and nervousness. If you know what a nervous person looks like, and you've seen what a person looks like that's in fear. If you do that or you see someone doing that when you're in conversation, pay attention. They're not being authentic. And one of the reasons why I'm going through this is so that you can know when you're not being authentic and you can correct the problem and say, uh-oh, I'm not being authentic. I'm giving off these signals. My body is trying to signal to me that I'm pretending, I'm acting, I'm being fake right now, and I'm not being honest. The next thing is to determine if you're being authentic is to determine whether or not you're in the present moment. Okay, when you're feeling safe and authentically in the moment, you tend to relax and respond naturally to what's showing up. When you're not being authentic, you tend to be hyper vigilant, watching others for signs that you're being accepted and okay. So if you're not being authentic, you busy watching around and see what people are doing, trying to see if they're believing whether or not you're being authentic. But when you're really in the moment and you're being authentic, this person will be relaxed. They're responding naturally. You don't hear fear or nervousness in their voice. And as a result, you know that you're dealing with a person that's authentic and you know that you're being authentic. And so pay attention to that because, we want to be honest. That you can act a lie as well as speak a lie. And a lot of people claim, even people who claim to be just, holy, 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 can say I don't lie verbally, but you may be giving off some lying with your body language and with this inauthenticity. And this is something that's really, really a sneaky area because most people have perfected being inauthentic. Most people know how to disguise it. Most people, know how to pretend. I've heard Bishop Jakes say once that some people are so good at being a pretender and putting on the mask and being fake until they could win an Academy Award. The Oscars haven't seen some of these best actresses and actors that we have out here in schools and churches and on jobs. So this is one way to determine, even in your relationships, your dating relationships, to determine if someone is being authentic. Take note of these signs that I just went over. Okay, now once you've identified the the clues of when someone or when you're not being authentic, the next thing I want to do is to walk through some ways that we can create an authentic life. You know, an authentic life is a life just of being pure and honest and without burden, because you don't have to carry that burden of being putting on this mask every day, or that's not you, or walking around in a dishonest persona. And because when you do that, that's a burden to wake up every day and put on this front, or to be fake, or to be dishonest. You know, and if we're not careful, it's so easy to get into this mode of being inauthentic with all these beauty enhancements, hair weaves, and contact lenses, and false nails, and eyelashes, and breast jobs, and bottom jobs, and you know, that's really a sign that we're becoming a society of being inauthentic, a society of putting on a mask. You know, let's go back to being real, being who we are. And that way, you know, our relationships can be more honest and pure, you know, and then we can trust better. No one really trusts people anymore, because you don't know if you're getting a fake person when you go out with, you know, a date, or go to lunch with a coworker. You don't know if you're getting the real them, or the actor, or their, as Bishop Jake say, their representative. And so these are ways to make sure that we are authentic and that we're living an authentic life, so that we can have peace in our life, and so that we can be free in our spirits and just free in our hearts. It's a lot of work when you're not authentic. All right, let's move on. 5 steps to creating an authentic life. The first thing that you need to do if you want to create an authentic life, you've got to redefine your values. And for most people, this is hard, you know, to do. But you got to know what you value and what you desire, not what the TV say you should value, not what the school or the church say you should desire. What do you desire? What do you value? You know, sometimes we hold tight to the same values we grew up with. And when we need to reevaluate what feels right to us now and align our actions around those things. Because the older we get, the more we evolve. Did you know that? Who you are today, in 5, 10 years from now, you're going to change. Every day we are evolving to a higher plane, a higher level of thinking. At least that should be our goal, to evolve for the better. But get clear on your values. Redefine them if you need to. Reevaluate them. You may find that your values, some of them still hold true as with the ones you grew up with. But I'm sure if you reevaluate, you're going to find that some of those values have changed. The next thing is you want to, number 2, foster an open mind. Do you know there are a lot of closed-minded people walking around this world? Their minds are so closed until nothing new can get in there. And sometimes they are so rigid, and they just difficult to try to get them to see a new perspective, a fresh perspective. I mean, they are just locked on having a closed mind. And in fact, they'll tell you, this is the way I was raised. This is the way we've done it. This is the way we've always done it. This is what my grandmama said. And these people cannot get a new idea. They're so closed-minded. But if you're going to be authentic, you've got to be willing to have an open mind. You can't be trapped in judgment. You can't be trapped with your old mindset, because this limits you. If you have a closed mind, you can't even expand yourself. You're just locked into one way, and that's the only way you know, and so you're never growing. You're never increasing, you know. And we don't want to be there. We want to be our authentic self, but we need to learn how to challenge ourselves to look at all sides of the situation. You will be surprised at how wrong the information you have in your closed mind can be sometimes, simply because you're too stubborn to open your mind and to expand. Your mind can be so closed, so tight, until even God can't get in there and give you a new revelation, a new update, and new instructions. And Lord knows we do not need that. We want to be open for God to come in and flow and speak to us. The third step, fill in this blank. if you really knew me, you know this. All right? If someone really knew you, what is it that you feel that they would know? Now, this is a prompt that Tony Robbins usually that he gives in his seminars with his participants. This step not only prompts introspection, but it allows people to reveal essential aspects of themselves. It also builds trust and credibility and confidence with the person, that you're sharing it with. Because sometimes if you can tell somebody something that's kind of like a personal issue that they didn't know that you feel like they should know, a lot of times when you can be honest and open with them, it tears down the walls of them being able to trust you, and it causes you to become credible for you to open up and share a personal issue. Now, authenticity does sometimes feel scary and vulnerable, but it also builds intimacy. If you're with somebody and they never tell you anything personal or private, don't trust this person. If they never have anything that they can tell you about themselves, but they always listen to your personal and private issues and stuff, or trying to seek out your personal and private information, you might need to reconsider this friendship and kind of keep a close eye on this person. But when we are honest with people, it tears down that wall, in a relationship. It actually brings you closer because they know that, oh, man, this person just shared something that was deep to their heart and dear to their heart. And so it causes you to see that, man, this is the real them. And it has a drawing force. The fourth step in being authentic is to notice when we're being inauthentic. Pay attention to those times when you are insincere in your speech. And we have those times, everybody does it at one point, where you are not sincere in your speech. Or pay attention when you're acting in a way that does not align with your core values. And that's where peer pressure comes in. Sometimes you can be hanging with friends or coworkers or people that you really look up to or you want to impress. And as a result, you'll find yourself maybe veering away from one of your core values. Like if one of your core values is not to smoke marijuana, but you want to rub elbows with these big wigs, and you find out that that's what they do, so you let your guard down on your core value, and you decide that you're going to smoke marijuana with these folks so you can fit in and be accepted, and you don't want to do that. We want to always act in a way that aligns with our core values, because if we don't, then we know that we are now walking in an inauthentic path. And I'm telling you, when you do, that's why a lot of young people get in trouble, because they try to fit in with people that are doing things that are compromising their core values. And we don't want to do that. We want to be people that can take a stand and people who can stand strong on what we believe when we know that it's the right thing to do. We don't want to get caught up in unhealthy habits and behavior just so that we can fit in. Let's be real. Let's be honest. Let's not be a copy of someone else. The fifth step is trust your intuition. Often we feel out of sync when we are acting inauthentic, don't we? Yeah, we do. It does. We feel out of sync. We feel like, oh, man, we feel uncomfortable. Some of us start sweating because we like, this is not me, and I'm just acting, and they think this is who I am, and I'm just really fronting. When you're not being authentic, it doesn't feel right. So pay attention to those hunches and those physical sensations and impressions. They can be your instincts telling you that you are not being genuine. And we know when we're being ingenuine. We know when we're lying. We know when we're fronting. We know when we're speaking in a tone that's not us. We know that if we have a country flavor to our voice, and then all of a sudden we go into this proper mode, let's just be who we are. I mean, speak the King's language, the King's English, but even if it has a country twang to it, then if that's who you are, that's just who you are. Let's be real with one another so that we can give out realness, and then it will encourage others to be real with us. I came across an article not too long ago, and it talked about this lady who had left public relations behind a year later to go write full time. And she was saying how she finally was truly feeling like herself. She was finally feeling authentic. And while the writing business had blossomed, she was saying how she still felt alive and she still felt authentically herself even 20 years later. And it was simply because she decided to get out of public relations. She knew that really wasn't her. But writing was really her gifting, her special niche. And as a result, it changed her life. It made her feel better. And even 20 years later, she's still feeling alive. You know, this is another area that we need to take a look. There are a lot of people go and get college degrees and end up working on these jobs and professions that's really not us. And so we end up going to work miserable every day because this is not what makes us happy. This is not really what we've been called to do. Now, I understand we got to pay the bills and all that, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on that job. You can create a plan, an exit strategy so that you can transition into something that fits and feels more like you. And so this is the purpose of tonight's call. We want to have an authentic life. We want to be authentically ourselves. Because if we're not, that's how we get stuck in relationships that are not good for us, careers that are not good for us. We never end up fulfilling our calling and assignment, and we just miss out on that life, the good life that was designed for us simply because we decided to follow the path that someone else was doing instead of being what we wanted to be. So I challenge you the rest of this week, be you. And if you don't know who you are, I challenge you to begin to discover that. Think on the things that I talked about tonight, and I'm sure they will help you get started and to really get to know you. Take yourself out to lunch this week. Take yourself out to dinner, and just begin to think back and ask yourself, who am I? Look through your pictures, old pictures in your picture box or your photo albums, and look. And a lot of times you'll get clues. Those pictures will help you go back and pick up the different things that you liked growing up and bring back those memories so that you can live that authentic life. Well, that's my time. This has been a Teachable Life Moment with Keila Bryson, where it is absolutely imperative that you live life. If you would like to connect with me, you can do so on Facebook. You can find me at Keila Bryson, Teachable Life Moments, LLC. I'm on Twitter at Keila Savant, Savant. You can visit my website, or you can email me, inbox me at Keila at KeilaBryson.com. All right, everybody, have a great week and work on being authentically you. Good night.